Olympus chose the Magic Circle in London, the HQ for the elite society of magicians formed back in 1905, to unveil the long-awaited Olympus OMD E-M5 Mark III. The theme of the event was to break free from heavy camera gear, and there was even a performance by an escapologist that I helped to shackle with chains on stage. So forgive the dodgy audio, but I'm here with the Olympus OMD E-M5 Mark III. As you can see, it's very, very comparable in size to the original E-M5 Mark II. So this is the 2, it's my old one, and this is the 3, this is the new one. It's notably lighter than the E-M5 II because it's made of polycarbonate. Still has the same weather sealing, still has all the same functionality. In fact, it has a whole bunch more functionality because it's got a lot of the feature set from the EM1. Initial thoughts: it's got a slightly revamped TruePic processor, so it's not a new processor, but it's been they've squeezed a bit more juice out of it, so it's got better ISO performance. The AF system has been rebuilt, so it's using the EM1 Mark II and the EM1X's autofocus, which means the continuous autofocus is much better. It's using phase detect as well as contrast detect, so it's got that hybrid autofocus. So hunting and locking on subjects is not going to be the issue that sometimes it could have been in the past. So you've got a few more millimeters of point difference between the eyes and the screens. You can see more coverage if you wear spectacles. It's also brighter, which is great because this is intended as like a go anywhere, do anything, travel or professional or go everywhere camera where conditions might be quite challenging. So being able to see a nice bright screen is brilliant. I'm just thinking this is a really great upgrade. Price is incredibly competitive, $1,099, body only. What's not to love? The event's magical theme of breaking free of heavy camera gear plays off one of the many strengths of the E-M5 Mark III, that being its incredibly slight body-only weight of just 366 grams. While the Mark III is about 2mm wider and about 4mm deeper than the Mark II, it weighs a substantial 51 grams less, thanks to a new polycarbonate body that is still weather sealed to IPX standards. It also sheds the pounds by ditching the old BLN-1 battery, which has traditionally been used in the E-M5 line as well as in the Olympus Pen F. Instead, the E-M5 Mark III uses the slimmer, lighter BLS-50 battery that's used by the E-M10 series as well as the Pen EPL cameras. Despite using this smaller capacity battery though, the E-M5 Mark III gets the same number of shots per charge thanks to more efficient electronics. Olympus quotes 310 shots, but I tend to get more like 350 to 375 from my E-M5 Mark II. Far more than just a lightweight body though, the Olympus OMD E-M5 Mark III features a host of night and day improvements over its predecessor. For starters, it's inherited the 20.4 megapixel image sensor along with the hybrid phase detect autofocus system from the flagship EM1 cameras. This new autofocus system, which is now completely customizable, enables improved tracking performance both for continuous shooting and for recording video, while the new sensor means that the E-M5 III can now capture 50 megapixel images using sensor shift high-res shot. Though unlike the EM1X, this mode is tripod only and can't be used handheld. Speaking of video, the E-M5 Mark III can record C4K at 24 frames per second, along with 4K video at up to 30 frames and 1080p at up to 120 frames per second. And yes, there's a built-in microphone jack to capture your audio. The camera also features an improved in-body image stabilization system, which was already market-leading, but now the base stabilization is 5.5 stops, and this goes all the way up to 6.5 stops when you pair it with Olympus Sync IS Pro lenses. You may have used Sony or Panasonic cameras with stabilization before, but trust me, Olympus is the market leader in this department. The IBIS in this camera makes an astonishing difference, giving you almost gimbal-like results even when you're shooting handheld. In addition to the new sensor with phase detect, the E-M5 III has another couple of tricks from the EM1 series. The body features some familiar flagship features, such as the dedicated ISO button, as well as the control module. However, its biggest coup is securing the EM1's Pro Capture function, which stores 14 frames before you fully depress the shutter, meaning that you never miss the crucial moment even if you're a split second slow on the draw. All in all, the Olympus OMD E-M5 Mark III is the camera that Micro Four Thirds users have been waiting for, and I think it's the camera that a large part of the market has been waiting for too. If we compare it to the recently announced Nikon Z50, the E-M5 Mark III actually outguns it in virtually every department. Compared to Nikon's new APS-C camera, the latest Olympus is smaller and lighter, and more importantly, it has smaller and lighter lenses as well. It has a virtually identical megapixel count, similar burst shooting of 10 FPS to the Nikon's 11 FPS, it shoots 4K 30 and 1080p 120, but it also has in-body image stabilization, weather sealing, a fully articulating touchscreen, Pro Capture, focus stacking. In fact, the only thing the Z50 has that the E-M5 III doesn't is a pop-up flash. With a 20.4 megapixel sensor, up to 6.5 stops of image stabilization, phase detect autofocus, cinematic 4K, 1080p slow-mo, weather sealing, and brilliant functions like Pro Capture, this is a fantastic camera period, not just a fantastic Micro Four Thirds camera. Admittedly, I didn't test the video as much as I would have liked to, but certainly in terms of stills, the camera performed brilliantly despite some very challenging low light conditions, which historically haven't always been kind to Micro Four Thirds cameras. While it doesn't feature a new processor, the TruePic 8 processor has been updated to give it superior low-light performance, to the extent that Olympus has actually increased the auto ISO upper limit by 2 stops to ISO 6400 from ISO 1600. The 20 megapixel files it produces are crisp and clean, with an impressive amount of recoverable data in the shadows and highlights. Of course, the RAW files aren't going to give you as much leeway as the more heavy-duty bodies like the Nikon Z7 or the Sony a7R4, but provided that you actually expose your images halfway properly and you don't rely on the sliders in Photoshop to get your pictures right, you really shouldn't have any issues with the pictures from this camera. The IBIS is right up there with the EM1X as the best of any camera out there, and I'm also a huge fan of the 27mm of eye-point distance in the EVF, which is a good couple of millimeters more than most cameras, as it makes shooting with glasses a much easier experience. These are only my first impressions and this isn't a full-blown review, and I'm looking forward to giving more feedback once I've had the camera a little bit longer. But I can safely say that I was sufficiently impressed that this was an instant purchase for me. And for £1,099 body only, I think anybody who picks up this camera will be over the moon with what it can do.